Not so long, our class has been subjected to an experiment set up by one of our classmates and the teacher. They performed a stage act without us knowing, which included physical violence in order for the desired effect to be achieved. One of our friends was supposedly arriving to class late, and when he entered the room, he got in an argument with the teacher, which ended with inappropriate behavior and violence of the rules, since the teacher was purposefully acting like he is pushing his student out of the door. Then all the eyewitnesses, or in other words, other people who were in the classroom, the whole time were asked to describe what they saw. The purpose of this social experiment was to show how opinions and perspectives of people differentiate even though they all saw the same situation happen. Every one of them described it differently, including the student who was pushed out of the classroom as well. In this case, his own point of view could be described as memories. This experiment shows that our perception of the past is not objective, as imagination and emotions could be influencing what is perceived to some extent.
We were able to extract the following knowledge question from our shared real-life situation: the effects of emotion and imagination on our perception of the past. In this context, emotion and imagination should be perceived as ways of knowing, which methods through which knowledge becomes apparent to us. Emotion is a strong feeling such as joy or anger, instinctive feeling as distinguishable from reasoning or knowledge. Imagination is the faculty of action, of forming new ideas or images, concepts, or external objects not present in the sense. Another way of knowing related to the topic is memory, the faculty by which the mind stores and remembers information. Have great memory for faces, for brain regions responsible for memory, or the mind regarded as a whole of things mastered. As we experiment from a real-life situation, people perceive and record information differently, and sometimes we might even adjust our memory not drastically, but rather in some specific details. For example, when you overthink the situation, you imagine multiple outcomes to simulate them in your head, and then this is done. It is quite hard sometimes to go back to the original, because the brain forgets what exactly is made up and what is truthful. We are going to be looking further into investigating the stated knowledge question by breaking it down into 3 sub-questions.
To what extent can we trust our memory? When memories are stored in your brain, you tend to remember the most important details. Facial features, what shoes was a person wearing, how strong the wind was, or the ones that stand out the most, the ones that are more unusual. But most of our memories are quite blurred. What happens if someone asks you what was the form of the cloud on a certain day? When we encounter fuzzy memories, or those that weren't really remembered well, our brain tends to fill in the gaps. It takes what it thinks it could be and starts to persuade it as it's something real, something that happened. That's why eyewitnesses' accounts are so unreliable. Every time when witnesses are asked to describe what they saw, their memory immediately adds new information, which becomes part of the memory. The memory does not remain constant and unchanged. Every time you remember something, the memory changes, and this process is called reconciliation. We remember the big picture better than its particulars. When absorbing a lot of new concepts, it is easy to get confused in an increasing flow of information. In order to avoid overloading our brains, it is necessary to look back and outline the big picture. The brain must understand how fresh knowledge fits into a single puzzle, how it can be useful. The brain assimilates information better if it makes a connection between it and something previously known within the framework of the knowledge. For a better understanding, here is a metaphor. Imagine your brain is a cupboard with many shelves. As you lay out an increasing amount of clothing in the closet, you begin to separate it according to different characteristics. A new thing, new information, is a black jacket. It can be sent to other knitted things, put it to a winter wardrobe, or to the drawer with dark clothing. In real life, your black jacket will find its place in one of these corners. In your brain, knowledge is connected with all the rest. You can easily remember the information later because it's already connected with the things that are firmly seated in your head. Where does the false memory come from? Every person changes throughout his life in many ways. For example, at the age of 30, you will remember a period of time when you were 6 years old differently than when you were at the age of 15. Distortions occur because we change, deteriorate, or improve our living environment. Other facts and events in life begin to matter. For example, at the age of 15, it was important for you to choose a university and a facility. At the age of 30, it could be important to create your own family. Because of the change of priorities, there is also a change of those fragments that appear or disappear from the memory. Scientists also note that what we can remember depends on a change in mood. Dark events most often come to mind when you feel sad. Any personal memories are quite easily distorted, especially when you suddenly remember an event after a certain period of time, for example if a year or two has passed. One more thing that should be taken into account is that each person focuses attention on something that is important to them right here and right now, while some pieces of information are lost. In such situation, the memory easily fills in the gaps with fragments taken from other sources, movies, news, television, stories, or other people. Made-up memories. Sometimes it seems to us that we clearly remember some events. In fact, a huge percentage of people did not observe them at all. A lot depends on media. Scientists have repeatedly conducted experiments that confirm the influence of the media on people's opinions. Emotional, but biased and untrue publications in the media can cause false memories. Hypnosis has about the same effect. It is noteworthy that the human memory is very flexible and plastic. To predict what a person will remember is almost impossible. A lot depends on his experience at the time of some sort of incident, the ability to empathize, to experience an emotional outburst. For one person, some events or news can cause a shock, and for other it will mean nothing. At such moments, certain associations are established, new neural connections are built. The stronger they are, the more clearly the memory will be. False memory can be regarded as unwillingness to remember something that is disadvantageable or uncomfortable. For example, if two opponents had a fight, but only one won, it is possible that in a year both will see themselves as winners. They did not invent a story from scratch, but they strongly distorted the meanings and facts. In fact, there were non-existent nuances of memories that were not in reality.
What is the lifespan and the stability of a memory once it is perceived? Do we unconsciously tend to recognize and remember only selective information? Generally speaking, three main categories of memory that have been distinguished. These are immediate memories, which last for only milliseconds, working memories, which last for about a minute, and long-term memories, which are able to last from an hour to many years. The type I will be looking for into. The human brain stores memory in an interesting way, as though your memory is interdependent and interconnected. For example, if you are thinking about your best friend's phone number, you might as well immediately remember what he looks like and the title of the movie you watched together. In other words, memories are formed through associations, and when an event is experienced, our brain ties to the sight, smells, sounds, and our own impressions together into a relationship. That relationship itself becomes the memory of the event. On one hand, even long-term memory can be forgotten really quickly, as sometimes we might forget what happened yesterday, or at least not remember some parts of the day clearly. Once a situation is perceived and recorded, it immediately starts fading because the brain analyzes the information and no longer sees it as significant. In continuation, moving to something else. However, you might know as a fact that you knew the Wi-Fi password but don't remember the password itself, since that memory is already gone and forgotten, because this memory itself is a working memory, and the memory about remembering this memory is a long-term memory. This is because the brain needs to filter unnecessary information, otherwise it will become overloaded. In that case, the brain functions as a search engine by connecting different associations together in an attempt to restore the lost information. But in this case, the information restored or remembered might not be the most reliable, as it is no longer the initial memory and could have been connected to the wrong associations or affected by other factors such as newer memories, meaning that the lifespan of a long memory could be quite short because the brain gets occupied by something else, but its stability lasts a little bit longer due to the internal connections associations. On the other hand, however, information in the form of memory could be deemed as important by the brain. For example, like in a situation which involves strong emotions regardless of their nature or simply excitement. In this case, memory from that moment is automatically marked as important and would be stored in the mind for a longer period of time than a common routine situation. Emotions are better in mind communicators than any other factors. What makes me think so is the fact that whenever you are thinking about anything First thing that comes to mind is positive and negative emotions and associations. Also, logically and important unusual potential history events will be recorded automatically, especially in the case where there is a catastrophe. If it happens to be an event that lasts for long periods of time, for example a presidency, it will be recorded in the brain clearly and in full detail, because this memory gets brought up every single day when watching TV, for example, repeating itself over and over again. And it is commonly known that repetition is the most effective way to remember information, even if it is not desired. Lifespans and stabilities of memories may vary depending on the type of the memory and its associations.
Another subtopic of this research is to what extent memories and memories are distorted by our psychological state. By the word memories, we mean memories or notes about the past written by participants of any events that have a certain cultural value or social and political significance. Memories were created based on the author's personal experiences, memories, and impressions. But the question arises, is it possible to fully consider the memories as an accurate and exact description of the events? It is obvious that since the memoirs were written many years ago, the authors could have overestimated what happened under the influence of both internal factors, such as aging of the body and memory loss, and external factors such as social influence. Also, there is such a thing as egocentric bias, which means a tendency to rely too much on one's own perception or to have a high opinion of oneself. From the point of view of psychology, this is the result of the need to satisfy the ego. Researchers have shown that impressions, ideas, and beliefs are easier to remember when they fit someone's own evoking and egocentric perspective. The effects of egocentric bias may differ depending on personal characteristics such as age and multilanguage proficiency. To date, there have been many studies on the specific effects of egocentric distortion in various situations. Studies of joint group tasks revealed that people view their own contribution to solving problems more significantly than other people's contributions. For instance, in 1993 in Japan, participants of the study were asked to write down fair or unfair behaviors that they or others did. They were writing about fair behavior that starts mostly with the word I, and they ended to start unfair ones with the word others. It clearly explains how people tend to attribute good things and behaviors to themselves and place the bad things on others. This means that it has a direct impact on the distortion of historical events that were set forth in his memories, because a person still has a tendency to unconsciously change his memories, not only because of the need to satisfy the ego, but also because of his own experience and prism through which he carries all the information in his head. On the other hand, Memories is a fascinating story that allows you to dive into the world of the author. Through reading about someone's life experiences or loss, we get inspiration and a deeper understanding of cultural and historical things. Memories are just a proposal to look at someone's point of view without the need to stand up to this position. What is more, creators don't have a purpose to present themselves on the good side to society. Their actual purpose is to tell their story, to warn people against mistakes. Also, I would like to mention a specific case of Barack Obama, who simply could not embellish his memoirs called Dreams from My Father, since politicians are fully responsible for each word and story set forth in memoirs. That is why the accuracy of stories depends on the genre of writing, as well as the responsibility borne by the author. Memory is our ability to encode, store, retain, and subsequently recall information and past experiences in the human brain. We are accustomed to think that our memory is a reliable source of information and events from the past. Of course, we don't hold everything in it, but if we remember something, we can easily appeal to this. But it turns out our brain is able not only to get rid of memories, but also to create new ones, as well as to change those that already exist. However, according to research, the psychology of memory is not so simple. What is recorded in the cells of our memory, in fact, is not always part of the objective reality, but refers to the so-called false memories. A false memory is a psychological phenomenon where a person recalls something that didn't happen or differently from the way it happened. The phenomenon was initially investigated by psychological pioneers Pierre Janet and Sigmund Freud. Using the experiment that was conducted by Elizabeth Loftus, who is professor at the University of Washington, a specialist in memory psychology, I would like to tell you more about false memories in action and how our memory can be distorted. She aimed to explain how blind trust in one's own memory can lead to fatal errors. After conducting a series of experiments, Loftus discovered that the memories can be embedded in someone's mind. For example, when a person is deliberately misinformed immediately after the event, or if he is asked leading questions about the past. In one of the experiments by Loftus, they showed photos of the accident to people. After viewing them, the experimenter asked questions. One group was asked to simply list the damage that they had memorized, and another asked leading questions. Did you notice that the car had a headlight broken? It turns out that our memories can not only change with time, but with the help of leading questions, an outsider can correct them. If we are gradually, knowingly misleading information about the events that happened to us, we can distort our ideas about the past. We will remember what was not real and sincerely believe in the reality of the experience. But on the other hand, in general, all our episodic memories are more or less distorted. They are, in essence, only a reconstruction of events collected from the building blocks of our memory. The more often we remember something, the higher the probability that the mental image will change from time to time. But this doesn't mean that we cannot rely on our memories at all. In fact, our brains do a great job every day in coding countless memories. But it cannot store the information about the smallest details. It would be impractical since it stores only the main events. Therefore, while we sleep, the brain stores and edits the information received in a day, trying to make room for a new one. Just like a computer frees up hard disk space in order to write more data there. For emotional well-being, it is more important to understand and preserve the essence than to mechanically fix everything that gets into the focus of our attention. This suggests that the main events all the same cannot be distorted when it is no longer recognizable.
In conclusion, to what extent are memoirs the same as memory and history? The effects of emotion and imagination on our perception of the past. To summarize our conclusions, I would like to say that emotion and imagination have a major effect on our perception of the past, as we as human beings, generally speaking, have a tendency to distort our memories. Emotion as a way of knowing influences the way our memories are recorded in the brain. It could be compared to a lens which functions as a filter for all the information going into the brain, as that information in the form of memories is marked by these emotions. For example, memories that we distinguish as positive are more likely to be exaggerated than negative, on the other hand, to be understated, unless the information hoarded decides otherwise. In the case of imagination, memories are moderated in the brain in some cases with the will of the holder or naturally without the holder's consent. In both cases, no matter the cause, memories are internally changed to fit the preferences of the holder. In each case, the history is no longer truthful and technically can no longer be considered history, since the definition of history itself implies that the information is truthful and as objective as possible. Memoirs, however, are subjective, meaning that the holder had total control over what is written or said and how the situation will be perceived. They are affected by personal emotions and possibly imagination, which distorted. Now, thinking logically, memoirs and memories are quite different in the sense of reliability. As memories are distorted unintentionally, and memoirs are distorted intentionally because they are analyzed deeper. History is the general representation of the event occurred. It is composed from different points of view in order to gain the most accurate representation possible, as it considers multiple subjective opinions to create one which is objective to a certain extent. Just like the experiment described in the beginning, multiple points of views have been gained from students present in the room when the accident happened. Expectedly, people had different opinions. This shows how opinions and perspectives of people differentiate, as well as opinions of the supposed actors.
In addition, such conclusion could be connected to the following real-life situations. A good example would be a crime scene analysis, due to the fact that such a serious matter requires the most objective view possible. This is the reason why eyewitnesses play such an important role in the investigation. Multiple people are asked to share their point of view, and then experts consider all the information available to construct the most possible and truthful representation of the occurred. Another example is the way various events are shown in the media. In the case of an issue of global significance, the news usually go viral and thousands of people express their opinions, and the majority of them are affected by their own emotions and imagination when they share the story further. It could be compared to a game of Chinese whispers, since every point of view is based on another previous to it.